Okay, so thank you very much. Our next speaker is Garry Machlis. Garry is Professor of Environmental Sustainability at Clemson University. He is also the Scientific Advisor to the Director of the National Park Service. And his talk is called Revising Leopold, a Future Vision for Protected Areas. And at first this title might seem a bit random in comparison to the rest of the talks we've had here, but in no way is it, because we need to think about a process by which we move forward, how we get the community together, and how we think about what we have now in terms of the 10 and 7, or moving towards the 10 and 17%, and then where we want to be in the future, and what minds we need to bring together to achieve this, and how we set a process in place. And so Gary's going to talk about a case study, essentially, in the United States where they've done just this. Gary.
Which button do I press? Oh, down arrow to make it go. Okay. Thank you and good morning. Regardless of what target is used to engage, cajole, or provoke the conservation of nature, there's a critical need to develop and apply new science-informed principles for protected area management. And that challenge extends not just to developing such principles, but applying them and integrating them into management policy and practice on the ground. I'd like to briefly share with you an example from the US that is having a significant impact on how we manage the US National Park System. And to do that, I have to go back to 1960s and the first World Park Congress. Right about that time, Starker Leopold, the son of Aldo Leopold, prepared at the request of President Kennedy a report on wildlife management in the national parks. It became known as the Leopold Report, and for about 50 years guided the resource management policies of the US parks. And at its core was the recommendation that parks, and a national park in particular, should represent a vignette of primitive America, a static image of primitive America. By the way, it went on to say, before the coming of the white man. That vignette approach has been used and informed everything from the education of park managers to the policies used by the US government. Yet much has changed since 1963, and in fact the first World Park Congress. The kinds of and numbers of national park system units in the United States has grown dramatically. The acreage in the United States since that report has grown considerably, and even the visitation to the national parks, not only has it diversified, it has grown significantly. But not just the change inside the park system, but changes outside. This is a figure that shows global and continental temperature change, and the red lines that you see are the time when the Leopold Report was written in the 60s. So you can see it was written during and clearly prior to climate change vulnerability. Also, we have seen changes on the ground. While the first upper picture is 1910 and the lower picture is 97, we still see the impacts on the ground of these kinds of dynamic forces. In addition, whole new fields of study have emerged since when Leopold wrote his report, whether it's conservation biology or cultural anthropology. Whole new ways of thinking about protected area management have come from these new disciplines. For that and all other kinds of reasons, the director of the Park Service assigned the Science Advisory Committee of the National Park System Advisory Board to revisit the original Leopold report and report back to him the findings. we created a National Park System Advisory Board. We went out and asked an extraordinary team of scientists to participate, and they said yes. So on our team, we had 2 Nobel Prize winners, 1 former member of the National Science Foundation, 3 members of the National Academy of Science, 2 winners of the Presidential Medal of Science, some outstanding conservationists such as Tom Lovejoy and Healy Hamilton. Healy, I think you are here as an author of the report. There's Healy. And an extraordinary, we had 1 Knight of the British Empire as well. And this group worked tirelessly for a year to develop a new report, but they were held to 1 quirky detail. The original 1963 report was 23 pages long, and that's all they got. The revisiting report also was limited to 23 pages. What were some of their key findings? I can only share with you a few, but I did bring copies of the report for anyone who would want to take a copy home, or you can find it online. One, I think this just popped off. Yes, it did. Hello? Hello? This popped off. But meanwhile, I'll just let the computer do that. A key example is that environmental changes confronting the Park Service are widespread, complex, accelerating, and volatile. Now that sounds just fine, but imagine all of them together, which is the real world. They're not just widespread, they're not just complicated, they're not just accelerating, and they're not just volatile. Natural and cultural resource, there we go, sorry. Natural and cultural resource management must simultaneously take place, and in general interdependently. For us, that's a revolutionary thought. To not silo our parks as cultural parks or natural parks, but to manage them interdependently. There are many other key recommendations, but where did it lead? A key is a policy statement that suggests the overarching goal of park resource management should be to steward park resources for continuous change that is not yet fully understood. Now imagine, I have a committee of extraordinary scientists, Nobel laureates, all that stuff, and they're saying the scientific community has to be humble. We don't yet fully understand the systems we're trying to manage. And this machine is, again, misbehaving. Hello, I'll just continue. Pointless presentation. That we don't fully understand, we manage them in order to preserve ecological integrity, cultural and historical authenticity, provide visitors with transformative experiences, and form the core of a national conservation land and seascape. The precautionary principle was raised by this committee. It's a principle that requires stewardship decisions that reflect science-informed prudence and restraint. And this is one of the few reports to the American government that use the word prudence. Prudence and restraint. Importantly for us, we cannot manage our resources based only on science. For this triangle of decision-making also includes accurate fidelity to the law, long-term public interest defined as multiple generations, and best available sound science. Science is part of it, but so is law, and so is public interest. The Park Service Centennial, coming in 2016, provides us a critical benchmark in progress in meeting, and these are the words of the committee, an enduring responsibility. How are we moving from recommendations to policy and action? Because the 2016 Centennial is our benchmark, we are currently, the Park Service, converting this lofty document written by this extraordinary group of scientists into specific policy guidance. And in 2016, it will be enforced as Director's Order 100 on the 100th anniversary of the Park Service, with guidance from everything to revising our understanding of what it means to impair resources, to the minimum scientific literacy required to be a superintendent in a national park, to the need to blend natural resources and cultural resources into the same organizational frameworks. And by 2016, the recommendations that have guided us will be converted to action on the ground. And if we do that, not only can we achieve Aichi targets or other targets to be established, we can do it well.